Sequels are an often discussed and long-lasting element of film. I think everyone has a few similar reactions when learning that their favorite movie is getting a sequel. It's either cautious optimism, absolute horror, or diving deep into the hype. There's been so many sequels in the long history of film that you could probably boil it down to a science. In my personal experience, there's three categories of sequels. There's the first kind, which are the types that build on everything the film before it did and even expand on it drastically. Some good examples of this type being The Empire Strikes Back and Shrek 2. The second kind, and usually the most lackluster, are the sequels that are basically the same movie again. Think of Ghostbusters 2 or Terminator 3 for this category. And the third is the one that has the most risk but also the most reward. That type being what I like to call the wide left turn. It's basically a sequel that feels distinctly different from the last movie. When it works, it builds on it and even involves a whole franchise into a new identity all on its own. Think of Evil Dead 2 as an example of this, which, not gonna lie, Evil Dead 2 might be one of the best films ever made. But when it doesn't work, it feels like getting the worst case of whiplash you've ever experienced. Think of something like Escape from LA. Thus, we get to the subject of today's video. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Secret of the Ooze. If you watch my channel or have seen my previous video, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a cinematic masterpiece, you'd know I love the original film. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. But I bet many of you after watching that video wondered what I thought about its follow-up. Well, I plan to answer that in this video. But first, allow me to talk about my personal connection and introduction to this movie. As I said in my previous video, my mom introduced me to the original movie, and we watched it together as a family pretty frequently. But what I didn't mention is that TMNT 2 was usually a movie we watched together immediately afterwards, or the next day. So in a way, it was sort of a double feature type of deal for us. These movies are sort of interlinked in my brain, to some extent. But I always remember drastically preferring the first film to the second one. Not that I thought the second one was bad or anything. More so, the first one impacted me far greater than the other one. And after making that first video, thanks for all the views on that video by the way, I really appreciate it. I wanted to rewatch it and fully flesh out how I felt. But before I get into my opinions on the movie, I want to talk about the film's production history. The first thing I think I should mention, and probably the most important fact about this film's production, is that it was instantly rushed into production. After the major success of the first movie, they basically jumped straight into making this one without any breaks or stops. And due to this decision, the production of this film was a bit chaotic, and at times dangerous. And yeah, I did say dangerous. Apparently, while filming the stunt where the turtles were hanging from the net, a cable snapped, and the actors fell multiple feet. One actor broke his ankle, and the other one strained his back. Another fact about this movie you'll pick up on when watching it is that many actors weren't able to or refused to return for the sequel. One such example is Corey Feldman. He had to refuse because at the time he was going through rehab, which I hope went well for him. Judith Hoag, the actress for April in the first movie, actually convinced herself to not come back at all. This is supposedly because she had a lot of issues when she worked in the original TMNT movie. They also didn't get the original actor for Shredder back, though I don't know why he didn't come back. Also, fun fact, the actor who played Super Shredder at the end of the movie is actually Hall of Fame wrestler Kevin Nash. Well, technically he was inducted into the Hall of Fame twice, but that doesn't matter for this video. A great example of this film's rush production is actually the Ninja Rap. That's because this song was written in 30 minutes. I mean, I know there's many songs that are written super fast and probably in way less time, but did nobody at least even try to do multiple drafts of the song? The writing for this movie during production was also all over the place. For example, one plan was to bring in the characters Bebop and Rocksteady from the cartoon, but Peter Laird objected because he didn't want the film to be just like the cartoon. They also planned to make the character Professor Perry an alien in disguise. Specifically, he would have been an Utrom, which is an alien species from the comics and was actually the basis for Krang. Eastman and Laird also didn't want to bring back Shredder because, to be fair, I don't know how anyone would have survived getting crushed inside of a dump truck. The weapons in this movie were also heavily censored or outright cut at points, which is mostly due to parents at the time pearl clutching about how violent the first movie was. When in reality, it wasn't that violent, but whatever, I guess. What's worse is the British Board of Film Classification got uppity about Mikey using sausages like nunchucks, which resulted in them raising the film age rating. Well, I hope none of these guys actually went to New York because they'll be terrified of seeing everyone with hot dogs. Sorry, I meant processed meat-based weapons in their hands. That's all I really gotta say about the research though. Now, on to the review. Let's start with a discussion about the plot of this movie. it kind of feels like it's all over the place. The events of the story either feel like they happen too early, too late, or basically add nothing at all. For example, they don't even go after the ooze until 30 minutes into the movie. Maybe it's just me, but I would have had that happen way before the 1/3 mark of the movie. But due to that event happening so late in the movie, you have far less time to expand on what that means for the film and the characters. Mind you, this movie's about an hour and 20 minutes long, so the ooze and what it can do isn't explored too much at all. They don't really give any characters any overarching conflicts or arcs. One such moment that is probably the most egregious is when Donnie is having an issue because he learned that he and his brothers were created because of an accident. But this happens a literal hour into the movie, and Splinter immediately qualms his fears about this conflict. Now, maybe realistically this would happen, but that doesn't mean it makes for a great plot. They could have used that to build something interesting with Donnie's character, build up an emotional core of the movie, but instead they just let it sit there and they try to hint at an emotional core when it's not there to begin with. Bouncing off that example, I want to talk about the characters. Most of the characters, but mostly the turtles, are more exaggerated in this film than the previous one. Now, not all the characters are strongly affected by this shift. Splinter and Leo stay mostly the same, and Mikey is similar but fires off more jokes in the original. Donnie is a bit different, but they just accentuate his nerdiness and make him a bit more soft-spoken. However, I think Raphael was one of the worst affected by this. In the first film, he had a temper, but he never came off as an outright asshole. But in this movie, there's so many scenes where he's just actively a dick. He's so dead set on going back to their original home from the first movie, but everyone literally tells him that all the Foot know where they live. Yet he's so confident that he could beat them up. Like, I'm sorry, didn't you get jumped by like 100 of these guys in the last movie? They knocked his ass out for weeks. I'm sorry, but he's actually acting stupid. And then he gets Kino involved, after being told not to, by having him join the Foot and getting immediately caught. The most irritating part about all this is that he gets no repercussions after this. Like, okay, he gets caught, but don't you think someone would chastise him after the fact? Not even Splinter. Jeez, Raph kinda sucks in this movie, dude. Here's a good time, I think, to talk about the villains. Firstly, Toka and Razar. I'm sorry, but what do these characters add to the film? Like, at all outside of being something strong for the turtles to fight. They also constantly make active mistakes that just make the villains look incompetent. Now, in the 1987 cartoon, I'm okay with this dynamic because Bebop and Rocksteady have a funny dynamic with Shredder. But the previous movie established that the Foot Gang was to be taken a little bit more seriously and that they were a little bit more intimidating. But now in this movie, they just feel like an irritating group of bullies. In a way, it's kind of betraying what they presented to us before. Shredder also just kind of comes off as very stupid in this film. He makes nothing but back-to-back mistakes. I mean, when he turns into Super Shredder, he planned on drowning the turtles? Dude, they're turtles. This is one of the stupidest things I've seen in the whole TMNT franchise. Here's a good spot to actually talk about the comedy of the movie. Overall, I think it's very hit or miss. There's a lot of jokes that land very well. Like, this gag right here is really funny.
The perimeter's quiet. Yeah, a little too quiet. Come on. Okay. Well, that was easy. Yeah, a little too easy. Look, it's Raph. Yeah, a little too Raph. You guys.
See, this is funny because it sets up a precedent, punchline, and a reaction, as well as making fun of a bad cliche line. There's also a lot of visual gags that I like. For example, I like this one where Donnie all of a sudden has a watch when he figures out they're set up for an ambush. However, some of the gags just fall flat or leaving me scratching my head. For example, I like the gag where Mikey starts quoting Casablanca, but I kind of feel like this might be a bit misplaced. I doubt the target audience of the movie would even get this reference. I get it now, after I've seen Casablanca, but what 9-year-old in 1991 is gonna get this joke? On a better note, the animatronic work might be better in this movie than the original. One good scene to show this is a small scene of Mikey eating a pretzel. It's kind of subtle, but think about it real quick. How did they do that? How did they convincingly have him eat a pretzel and have a chunk of it disappear? I think this is one of the few moments of having an animatronic character convincingly eat I've ever seen, without using any cutaways whatsoever. Another great animatronic effect is having the drool come out of Razar's mouth when he sees the donuts. That must have been hell to figure out without ruining any of the rubber or material for the suit. The music in this film is overall pretty good, specifically the original score. It's very much a great addition to the original film's already great score. Maybe this is controversial, but I think the beat to the ninja rap is great, but the lyrics and rapping are incredibly boring. And it's not like there wasn't great rap music from this time. They could have easily gotten someone like LL Cool J, Rakim, or Big Daddy Kane. I bet they would have killed it on this beat. We could have had a classic TMNT song, but instead we got the ninja rap. Overall, I think there's possibly a great movie buried deep under this one. But the movie's a little too rushed, and it's a little bit overstuffed. In a way, it feels off, like it's trying to be a sequel to a movie that never existed. Almost like it's trying to be its own timeline or something. I know it's a bit unfair to review a movie based on what it could be, but it wastes a lot of its own potential. Part of me wishes that they took another year to really figure out and flesh out what they wanted to do, because the cartoonish approach isn't inherently bad. The problem is that they don't flesh it out in the right spaces. I would have been okay with a cartoony shift in this franchise, but instead they rushed it and now we get a half-baked movie with a very unflattering finish. I really wanted to be wrong about this movie. Seriously, I really did. I don't go into any movie wanting to dislike it, but it turned out more or less how I remember it. It can be fun, it can also be very dumb, and it just doesn't work as a follow-up to a genuinely great film. So, this was my first pretty negative review. I'm honestly wondering what the reaction to this video will be. Do you agree with me? Do you not? Well, let me know in the comments below. With all that being said, I'll see you next time.